Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a great Saturday. What I want to cover this week is building unity. And we see this in Ephesians chapter 2, verses 11 through 18. Just as a quick review, though, on what we've done in these videos so far through Ephesians is that in chapter 1, we should live out our riches and also care for others and learn the Bible. Then in chapter 2, we saw that we should grow into God's artwork. And then this week, build unity. If we think about the idea of unity, we think about the fact that no one wants to be left out. No one wants to be the one that's on the sidelines. No one wants to feel separated from the group. We think of the example of the kid where there's a group of kids that are going to play a sport and they're picking sides. And there's one kid that gets left out and they always is chosen last. He may not be the best at sports or anything. I may or may not have been that kid frequently, but we feel bad for that kid because he doesn't fit into the group necessarily. He's kind of shown to be different than the others. And sadly, though, that happens in the church as well. It shouldn't, but it does. And let's say, for example, you're in a new church in a new place. You go to church and you listen to the sermon, and the whole time you're there, no one talks to you. No one reaches out and welcomes themselves to you. You probably will think that church is not very friendly, and you probably won't return. But think, for example, if you go and someone is welcoming to you. Someone does reach out to you and then brings you in and welcomes you to a bunch of different people. That makes a whole different experience. And that's happened to me in my life, and I was wondering if it has happened to you in your life. If it has, maybe you could share in the comments and be a blessing to other people as well. So no one wants to be that one that feels left out. And we see how to build unity, how to get away from that in Ephesians chapter 2, verses 11 through 18. And first of all, we look at how to build unity by welcoming those that are different than us. And we see that in maybe covering a little bit of background to this would be helpful. So when Paul's talking to these people, it's Jewish people that have left recently the way of doing things the Jewish way, and it's hard for them to adapt to the new way of being a Christian. So before, most things were external. Like when you had a relationship with God, it was more external. You're doing sacrifices that are physical things. And now that Jesus has done the ultimate sacrifice, things are external, or things are internal now. So it's of the heart. So it's hard for the Jews to move from the external way of doing things now to internal for themselves, but also for other people. The other Gentiles that have never done this and don't have to learn it now, it's hard for them to get used to. So this is the situation that Paul's writing to in Ephesians. And so we see how we can build unity, first of all, by welcoming those that are different than us. And we see this I want to cover the verses 11 through 18, but specifically I want to laser point in on 12 through 13 and then 14 through 15. So we see in 12 through 13, first of all, that we should welcome those that are different than us. And those verses say, remember that you were at that time separated from Christ. He's talking to the Gentiles. Gentiles are everyone that are not Jews, so everyone else. They were alienated from the commonwealth of Israel and strangers to the covenants of promise, having no hope and without God in the world. But now, in Christ Jesus, you who were once far off have now been brought near by the blood of Christ. So since Christ has made that sacrifice, it's not just the Jews any longer, it's the Gentiles as well. If we look at the picture of the temple was built to where Jewish people were included in all of it, but there was a level at which the Gentiles had to stop. They weren't welcomed any further than this point. And that all changed in the New Testament. But as we look at that, it was just the Jews that were accepted and the Gentiles were the ones that were left out. So if it were still the Old Testament, we, the Gentiles, everyone else would be left out. But God welcomed us into the system. He welcomed us into the family. So since we were extended that kindness from God himself, we should extend that kindness to other people. When there's someone that's different than us, and we see them in the church, we should be welcoming to them. We should be open to them and building connections with them. So we were the different ones, and now we should be kind to others that are different. We see this idea in Galatians chapter 3, verses 26 through 28. Those verses say, for in Christ Jesus, you are all sons of God through faith. For as many of you as were baptized into Christ have put on Christ. There is neither Jew nor Greek. There's neither slave nor free. There's no male or female. For you are all one in Christ Jesus. And if you are Christ, then you are Abraham's offspring, heirs according to the promise. They're saying there's no distinctions. There's no gender. There's no age. I've heard if you're on Facebook still instead of TikTok, then you're old. So I'm old. There's no race. We're all the human race. We're all image bearers of God. We're all made in God's image. So even though spiritually there is no difference, in the real world, there is a difference in race, in the way that races are treated. And we see this in more recent times. Things are happening now. And we want, as the church, to be building towards unity. We want to be building a world where there's justice. And we want to be showing this in the church. And to build these things, though, it will be awkward. It's going to be hard to do. These things are not easy. So how we treat that is we should embrace the difficulty. We should embrace the awkwardness, because that's the way things happen. That's the way things start. So we have to be able to get past that and do these things. So we've seen that we can build unity by welcoming those that are different than us. We can also build unity by tearing down divisions. Those verses say, "For he himself is our peace, who has made us both one and has broken down in his flesh the dividing wall of hostility by abolishing the law of commandments expressed in ordinances, that he might create in himself one new man in place of the two, so making peace." And as we see as I was telling you before, the Jewish people had a covenantal system that was external. The new covenant, the New Testament, is internal. And the Jews had a hard time of living that out. And we see specifically in Galatians 2:14, we see that Peter had a hard time because he was Jewish. He had grown up with these rules. This is what he's known. He's never branched out from this. But now in this new context, he has to learn how to do this. But in this setting here, in Galatians 2, they're eating, and Peter kind of goes off with the Jewish people and leaves the Gentiles behind. And Paul confronts him and says, this is wrong. This is not the way the gospel is. And Peter admits that he's right. We're hard on Peter, but it can be difficult to branch out from what you've known. We like our comfort zones. We like what we're used to. And it's hard to change that. It's hard to branch out from what we're used to. But we have to learn to do that. We have to learn from Paul and Peter here that we have to break out of our comfort zone. When we do that, when we go from where we're comfortable into the next step, that's where growth happens. That's where God shows us what we can be, is when we're testing ourselves, when we branch out of where we're comfortable, what we've always known. We can't grow by doing the same things we've always done. You have to branch out and build connections and tear down divisions. So we want to be building those bridges. You may have been the one that felt left out before. You may have felt singled out in church. Well, I want to encourage you, give church another try. It may have made you feel like you never want to go back again, but you can be the change that you want to see in the church. You can be the one that initiates those connections. And I encourage you to do that. But maybe you've been going to church all your life and you've kind of grown to where you just have your own set of friends, your own set of people, and you don't really branch out of your comfort zone that much. I want to encourage you, branch out and reach out to people that you don't usually talk to or that are different than you. And if we can work on these things, if we can start building these connections and we can start to build unity, then we will start to see the church as God really wants it to be. If I can pray for you, please let me know. God bless, and I'll see you next time.